isn't it? I was in Bruges and losing Monday sort of has made my couple of days out. Anyone who's never been to Bruges, you should go. It's lovely. It's exceedingly busy. It's a bit like a Disney medieval town, but I enjoyed it tremendously. Food was good, weather was great, beer's pretty cool. Yeah, I am now officially part of the Bruges Tourist Board, and but I can assure you I'm not taking any commission from it. So yeah, well, here we go. What do we
Brilliant.
around? What's the time? Do we start or give a couple of minutes for people to wander in? Maybe another minute.
We'll
Do you
give it
think?
one more minute. We have this whole thing, don't we, about you shouldn't punish the punctual,
No,
and I
no.
quite like that. If people make the effort to turn up on time and we're here,
Well, we did.
we can. Well, we have no choice. We have no choice. But yeah, we'll just give it one more minute, and then we will get cracking.
It's a bit like going to the airport for your holiday.
Oh,
See what I did there?
nicely
So
done. Nicely done. Yep,
slowly moved it into the realm of now
nicely done.
today.
Well, shall we begin? And shall we
I
get
think
started?
so. The sooner we start, sooner we finish, and we will be definitely finished by 8 o'clock.
We will be. We'll
we,
be.
We never overrun.
So, thank you to everybody who's joined us this evening. I'm Andy Acton.
And I am Chris Strevens.
And we're directors of Frank Tone Associates, as you know, and we value and sell dental practices. So what we wanted to talk to you tonight about is, in essence, getting yourself prepared for selling your dental practice. Because, just give me 2 seconds, because there's a link between your holiday and your selling the dental practice. And primarily, it's around planning. That's what you need to do.
And is that a holiday shirt, Andrew?
Well, it could be.
Ah,
It
see,
could
there
be.
you go.
Yeah.
We are very relaxed tonight. We're just going to be sipping Mai Tais. Don't you worry about it.
So this is all about the passport to a smooth practice sale. And as we're right at the beginning of those summer holidays, let's link it to some of the sorts of things that you might be doing in preparing your for your holiday. But there's going to be a theme through this, and a lot of it is around planning and being prepared, because in the world that Chris and I operate in, so many people come to us at a time where they have already made a decision to sell. So they've already booked their holiday and they want to go. And for us, that's challenging because it means that we're having to rush and we're having to move quickly, and there isn't really much time to have an impact on that business. And we still get you a great exit, but it could just be a little bit better. So some of the things we're going to talk to tonight about are just those little tips that you can take away to make sure that you're better prepared.
Yeah, I mean, as we will say, it's not like you go on holiday and you don't start by rocking up at the airport, do you? And then
No.
go, I tell you what, which desk can I buy a ticket from for my destination? Because that's probably not particularly wise.
But
It might be interesting.
I bet there's people that do it though. I bet there's people that do it.
Someone we know. Do you remember that?
Yes, we do.
They didn't intend to, but they ended up having a very expensive flight to, I can't remember, was it Mauritius or the Maldives,
Maldives.
which was
It was the
totally
Maldives.
unexpected.
It was.
But anyway, that's another story. Feel free to DM us and we might tell you who it was. No, we won't. Our lips are sealed.
So let's have a look and see where we go. So in terms of getting yourself prepared, the destination, you have to set your goal early. And the holiday analogy is you don't book your flights without knowing where you're going. It's the destination actually determines the journey. That's kind of something that you need to get in place from day one. And if you think of your family holiday that you might be taking a bit later on in the year, it's kind of it's romantic in the sense of you're getting some time away, on your own as a family, as a couple. But you also need to think about what you want to achieve from that holiday. Similar to a practice sale, what do you want to achieve? There's lots of outcomes and there's lots of options. But if you don't know where you ultimately want to end up, it's so incredibly difficult to plan.
Yeah, true. If you don't know your destination, how can you plan? It always makes me think of, we both used to work for an Irish bank many years ago. And someone told us a story once about there was this tourist was in Ireland, Southern Ireland, and he asked this farmer how to get to like Belfast or something, which I know is in the north. And the farmer said, "Well, I wouldn't start from here." And it's that sort of ideology and thought process, isn't it? Really, if you want to get somewhere, you have to set your destination and then put everything around that destination. Otherwise, you'll be going the wrong way, or you're making wrong turns, or not being efficient, whatever it might
Oh,
be.
totally. And if you think about, a practice sale, it's working out what you want the exit to look like from your point of view. So there could be lifestyle goals that you want to achieve. There might be a financial need. It might be around legacy. And there will be a timing dynamic to that as well. And the timing dynamic is particularly relevant when
It's critical.
well, and it links so heavily to who your ideal buyer might be. So ideal buyers kind of fall into three types of flavors. There's somebody who works with you already in your practice, which will be one of your associates. There will be an independent dentist who's not connected to your practice, who's looking to buy, a practice and become an owner. And then there's the corporate world. But the timing's so critical because if you're going to sell to your associate an independent dentist, the sale process typically 7 to 8 months,
Yeah, yeah,
something in that order.
yeah,
But
definitely.
at the end of that period, you're likely going to be able to leave immediately. There might be a short handover period, but you'll probably leave quite quickly. However, if you sell into a corporate environment,
Definitely.
you could well be retained in that practice for a further 4 to 5 years. So from
With huge responsibility to
yeah,
deliver, to get your money out, but we'll talk about that later.
yeah, and that needs to be factored into your timing because if you plan to sell and you plan to retire, as in no more clinical dentistry, the corporate route needs to be explored perhaps way earlier than you think. And as Chris says, there's other elements to it as well. But that timing is really critical to make sure you get that right. There might also be some things that are non-negotiable to you. It might be that you say, I absolutely do want to stay on, or I absolutely don't want to stay on. And that kind of continuity needs to be factored into your plans, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I say I think the timing thing is it's people think it's going to happen much quicker. And I think the issue we would say is that you've got to realise that, I don't know who's listening and I don't know who the age is, but, people always say to us, they do, especially the older generation, I shook hands over a pint in a pub and it was done. And the answer is, yeah, but that was before NHS contracts. It was before CQC. It was before banks were anywhere near. And to be brutally honest, it was before things were as valuable as they are now.
Yeah.
And I think you need to sort of, as we say, that the holiday analogy is if you wanted to be if you wanted to have dinner in New York now,
Yep.
the answer is too late.
Yeah.
You should have left earlier on. And if you want to be gone by a certain time, and it might be, it can be totally down to you. It could be, I want to be gone by 60.
Yeah.
I want to be gone by 65, or I have to go because I'm ill. And I think one of the things I think you mentioned earlier, Andy, is what we say to people is quite often people say, I want to be sold by X. And we then say, do you mean you want to be finished dentistry?
Yeah.
Or actually just stop owning a practice?
Two very different things.
Yes, they are, aren't they? Because people, well, I mean, what do you think? I think people have different views, don't they, on what they want to do.
Oh, they do, and it really is. It's not a one size fits all. The clients that we've advised over the year, we have some. Sometimes through ill health, they need to sell and leave immediately because they can't continue. Other people plan it in. They don't want the responsibility of owning and running a practice anymore, but they're quite happy to stay on in that practice for a good number of years. So that's a different structure. So that planning really comes down to you as an individual. And I think from a high level point of view, I think the sooner you can start giving consideration to this, you don't necessarily have to do anything, but you start planning what that might look like in your own mind. There's a theory that big life decisions, getting married, having a family, buying a business, selling a business, they can take between 2 and 5 years to make because we let them like whir away in the back of our minds for so
A
long.
mile away, don't they?
And so you may find that you're already part way into that 2 to 5 year journey. You've already started to think, well, what does that look like and when do I do that? But the finish line doesn't actually happen until you actively start in the process. So if you're 2 to 3 years into that process of thinking what you're going to do, but your exit may involve you staying on in that business for an additional 3, 4, 5 years, actually it could be a 7 year process for you. These timelines get enormous quite quickly.
And also, I think it goes back to a point Andy made earlier on about who is your type of buyer. because yet again, the ultimate good sale is for the right price to the right person
Yeah.
at the right time.
Yeah.
And quite often, over the years, we've sold thousands of practices, and sometimes people say, "Well, I'm not going to stay on. I don't want to stay on. I don't like that at all. I don't want to stay." Well, if you stay on, you'll get a little bit more value because you're cementing
Yeah.
a goodwill, especially if it's private. And they sort of begrudgingly say, "Well, all right, I might do 6 months or 12 months, but no more." And we say, "Okay, well, that's good because that will help preserve the value." Da 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 da. And then you will find someone that is actually someone you quite like.
Yeah.
And we can guarantee that we'll meet you at a dental event in probably 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years' time, and we'll say, "Have you retired?" You go, "Well, no, actually, I'm down to one day. I'm really enjoying working at the practice," because I think one of the things that I find, isn't it, running a practice is, let's be honest, bloody hard work. And
Yeah,
I
it is.
think that people fall out of love with the running the practice, not necessarily the dentistry and the patients.
Yeah.
And I think when you've sold and hopefully sold to someone you quite like, suddenly all that goes away, and you're now able to be a dentist again. And I think that our clients, that you as a dentist, actually really enjoy that. So
Yeah.
therefore, you've got a bit of cash in the bank. You're no longer the person who's rung up on a Saturday afternoon because the lights are blown or cars driven to the front of
Yeah.
your practice. And I think it makes a big difference. But you need to think about it. You
I think
need to
it's
think
almost
about
trying
it.
to separate being a clinician from being a business owner.
Yes,
Those two
yes,
things
yeah, definitely, yeah.
aren't linked and fixed together. You can continue to be a clinician, but not the business owner. And almost having that freedom to make that decision to step away from business ownership, but either in that practice or another practice to carry on as a clinician is quite liberating. And it's so rare, as Chris was saying, we ever have a client who says, "I'm fed up with clinical dentistry." Normally, it's all the
Yeah, it's
business
the other
bits that
stuff.
go around it.
Because it's hard. It is hard work. It's
Well, for sure.
lonely. It's we say we're very lucky. We've owned Frank Taylor's nearly 25 years, and we're a partnership, and it's great because if I have a bad old day, then Andy has a good old day, and Andy can talk to me about my bad old day, and vice versa. And what is it? A problem shared
Yeah,
is a problem
problem
halved, or
halved.
something.
Yeah.
But for most of you guys, you don't have that, and
No.
it's really hard. We sort of, if I was wearing my sun hat because I'm going on holiday, I'd be doffing it to you and saying it's hard work. But planning can help big time.
It can. It can. So let's see what else we've got. This is and that actually says 2026. It is correct. I know we're in 2025, but the reason for it is that for anybody watching this evening, you will still be owning your practice for the remainder of 2025 because we were saying that that sale process takes kind of 7 to 8 months, and if we're not already in an engagement with you and we're actively looking for buyers, there's some pre-work that needs to go on before that. But this is around kind of
Can I just say this is probably a good time. If you are on the cusp of wondering what to do, don't forget that CGT goes up on the 6th of April in 2026. So
yes,
so I mean, what we got? July. It's going to be tight,
yeah, it's possible.
but it's possible. An
With
extra
a
4%.
something to bear in mind, a lot of what we're talking tonight is around planning and timings. And the timings we're giving you are averages based on our experience of selling many practices. But the key factor in the timeline of how quickly your sale will go through will actually be you. Because as the vendor, it's your responsibility to do the due diligence. And I don't know many people that have got a spare couple of hours a day. Most of us are pretty busy. So if you need to do your
For
due
sure.
diligence, that's going to impact on the time you've got available, which is quite limited. And that's why at the beginning of a deal, very often it's a bit slow to get going because you, as the seller, needs to assemble a whole lot of information, which is that due diligence bundle. And if anybody's interested in a template for what you need to assemble for due diligence, feel free to drop us a DM, drop us a message, drop us an email. You can find us through social media or
If only to help yourself go to sleep because it is very long
it's long and
and
it's
dull.
not exciting, but the brutal reality is it needs to be done. And the only person that can do it is you. Over the years, we looked at different models to help people do the due diligence and they all fail. because you know where the documents are. You've got to pull them together. The sooner you can start assembling those, the smoother your deal will go through. With good due diligence preparation on your side, a deal could go through in 4 or 5 months.
Especially if you're the freeholder.
Yes.
I mean, it's and limited company
Yeah.
and all those sort of things that we can talk you through. But I think stories. We love a story, and there's a guy. It was a few years ago, but basically he took 6 months to get his due diligence together. 6 months to get his due diligence. I mean, it's ridiculous, and then it all kick-started and everything went on. But as he was coming towards completion, an issue arose with his associate, which he had to deal with, and it was a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. And the transaction went through, but it was very stressful for him. And I can remember he got exceedingly cross about the fact of it should have completed before, and not with a certain degree of I wasn't smug, but I just highlighted that if actually he'd have done his due diligence when we suggested, he'd have already completed, and the issue would no longer be his. It would have been the new owners. So it's, as we say, the due diligence guide is some fantastic light reading for you, but it's not hard because you've got it all. It's just trying to find it all, isn't it?
I think weirdly, actually, CQC coming in helped a lot of practice.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah,
Because I think there's lots of the policies, the protocols, the documents, the contracts that you need are now more readily available than they were previously. So I think that's helped. But don't underestimate the work and the time involved in doing that. But also, early preparation will do a number of things for you. It will from a financial point of view, it means that your accounts are going to be tidy, your accounts are going to be up to date. There's an opportunity for us to look at your accounts and see if there's anything we can do to improve your profitability, but also do some tidying up, because sometimes people's accounts aren't up to date, or they might have incurred some costs that were extraordinary that need to be explained. So from that point of view, it's good news. We've had people that cannot find their NHS contract. We've had people that don't know where their lease is. So that early preparation sets you in a really good position. And as we said before, being prepared doesn't mean you necessarily have to do anything about it, but it does mean that you are prepared.
Yeah, and I think a great one with Annie said, the costs. We will bang on about the fact of most people have no idea financially what's going on in their business. But it's a really good idea to know what's going financially on in your business, because there are reasons for costs. I think the one we see quite a lot is whereby either you've had a bit of a problem retaining staff or actually just recruiting staff. So you've ended up paying very high locum costs to get either dentists or other, whether nurses or reception. So your cost base is actually looks pretty high. But if you don't tell us, we will hopefully spot it. But if say, for instance, it cost you an extra, I don't know, we've seen 50 grand. We've seen an extra 50 grand,
significant, yeah.
50 grand a cost. Well, if you happen to be, depending on which area you're listening in, that could be, let's say, middle of the road 4 times. Well, that's 4 times 50 on your profit. That's £200,000 of value that you could lose unless you understand it so as we can articulate it to someone else, or you can articulate it to someone else. So it's so important, this, as Andy says, having a look at stuff. It goes back to the holiday analogy, isn't it? You wouldn't not book your travel insurance or suddenly go, because what is it? If you book your travel insurance when you book your holiday, then the answer is if anything happens between then, you're covered, aren't you?
Yes.
If you book your travel insurance on the day before you fly, then the answer is you've only got until that time. Yeah, it's madness.
But also, I think being prepared early says an awful lot to your prospective buyer about how you run your business. So if we're having to present to prospective purchasers accounts that are 18 months out of date, the underlying tone here is that it's not a particularly well managed and run business. Whereas if we can present figures that are absolutely up to date by way of financial accounts and management figures that are really in the last couple of months, it says I'm really on top of my business and I know what I'm doing. And that's the sort of business that people want to buy. And that's the sort of business that you'll also get a premium for as well. Because the buyer knows they're going to be stepping into a business that's well structured, well organized, got systems, got processes, and it's going to be a safe place for them to go into. The majority of people who buy a dental practice are first time buyers. So they're quite nervous. They don't have the years of experience that you've got. They're coming in quite green. So the better the systems and the setup that you can present to them, the more likely you're going to get your asking price or possibly even a premium.
And goodwill, that's the major value in your business, unless there's a freehold.
Yeah.
And simplistically, goodwill is the valuation of the repeatability of that income and profit. That's what it is. If you have one really good year, the answer is you've had one really good year. What you want to be able to do is to build and have 3 really good years, as opposed to 1 stonkingly good years, because it's a real, I think it's quite an interesting, you have to put yourselves in the shoes of the buyer. So, I'm trying to think, so let's say you've got a practice that turns over £500,000 and then the next year, let's say there was a 10% pay increase in fees, probably not, but 550. And then in the 3rd year, which happens to be the year of the accounts that you're trying to sell, it goes to 750. Now, the possibility is that you've just done every bit of conceivable work on all of your patients, or it could be you did a marketing campaign and got loads of new patients in. But what you have to do is to understand what it is, because as Andy was saying, it helps you put you in premium position, doesn't it, when you're selling, because you actually understood what it was. Because nobody wants to take over a dental practice that basically, I don't know if I can say this phrase, you've ripped the arse out in that last year. We've seen people do things where they've advanced treatments so as they get them done. We've seen people where they've as soon as they've not even exchanged, as soon as they've got an offer, they then stop doing all follow-ups. They don't bother filling the book up and stuff. I mean, these are just cataclysmic disasters waiting to happen, and it puts you as a seller from being up here into being sort of reactive, isn't it? Which is never good.
Trying to retain the mindset of it's your business through to completion is quite challenging. We have so many clients that it varies between their practice going to the market on sale and an offer accepted. But once people accept an offer, quite often you can almost feel the foot coming off that accelerator. And the more you can keep your business in good shape, the better, because it is going to be reviewed by the buyer as they go through the process. A bank valuer will most likely want to check on your most recent figures. So keeping it up to date is important. But what all this preparation does is it enables you to sell when you are ready, as opposed to when you have to. Because things do come out of the woodwork, certain things happen and people sometimes have to sell a little bit sooner than they thought. If you're prepared, you're in control. And that's what a lot of this is about being in control of your destiny. And I stress again, being prepared doesn't mean you have to sell. It means you're prepared. But being prepared means it gives you the choice. And without the preparation, you may not have that choice.
You're reactive.
Yeah.
I think that's what we just say. You're just reactive because you're for a holiday analogy, you're being pushed by the tide,
yes,
rather than you being in the boat or whatever. It's just you're reacting, not proactive.
So where else are we going on holiday? So when you go on holiday, you pack your suitcase with all the bits and pieces.
I think we have our passport. Definitely things like your swimming trunks.
Yeah, need some clothes.
Also bug spray, depending where you go to. Probably some suntan lotion.
Lotion. Yeah.
What else do you think?
But the thing is, the point here is that we're rattling off a list because we're going on holiday. But if any one of those items is missing, it's going to have an impact, and it might have a small impact. But if it's your passport that you forget, it could have a big impact. In that it means you may not ultimately end up actually getting away or not.
It's your bug screen. You don't want to be bitten by mosquitoes.
Yeah. And then you've kind of got this point that we seem to be labouring a lot, but it's so important, is the planning and the preparation. If you pack on the morning of your trip, you haven't got much backswing to go and get something that you might need. If you think about what you're going to need in the days before, and perhaps you pack the day before, then you're in a better shape. And this flows through to kind of the business side of things, because we've talked about the financial accounts, making sure that your accounts are up to date. And we would typically need 3 years financial accounts, the last 3 years. So we want them to be up to date. We want them to be clean and credible. And that credible bit is a bit that Chris was just talking about, which is your last year reasonable relative to what's gone on before? With an explanation, that's fine. But if there is no explanation from a buyer's point of view, it might make them nervous. So if, say, there was that, using Chris's numbers from 550 to 750, but during that period you'd added an additional surgery, well,
It would make sense.
it would make sense because you perhaps brought in another clinician, you got that surgery. We work to about £350,000 per surgery. That's kind of a number that we have in our mind that we can expect to be produced in a surgery. So if you have a 3 surgery practice, somewhere around £1 million of income, that sounds like it's been quite well optimized. So we're always looking at what kind of space do you have relative to what you're doing, but your numbers really do need to be up to date.
And it also works backwards as well. I mean, we sometimes get people get very concerned about, oh, I've lost an associate. I mean, that's the quite common one, isn't it? I've lost an associate. They may have left, or might go on maternity leave. They've got a locum in. Locum's not quite as productive. Fees have dropped a bit, and they're very worried about what that's going to do to the value. And all I can say to reassure you is that that's life. That's what happens in a dental practice. So buyers will be, or should be, fully aware, because they will have been in practices where they've seen it happen or they've done it themselves. We, as long as you tell us, will be aware of it. So then we can couch it. And I'm thinking of a practice that we just recently sold where the guy injured himself, did something with his shoulder, I think it was. And he couldn't practice anymore. He can't practice anymore. And his gross dropped. The practice gross dropped because he wasn't grossing. But what we were able to evidence was that everyone else was starting to pick up the gross, and it wasn't lost gross, it was just sort of delayed gross, if that makes sense. So going back to what Andy's point was about understanding it, don't worry if something like that has happened, because most people are happy to go, yeah, right, yeah, I know that people do leave, and I know that you can't necessarily replace them within 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. I mean, sometimes depending on where you are, it can be a long, long time. But it's important going back to just understanding and articulating it to us, not waiting for us to ask the question.
So much of it's around communication, in that most things can be explained, but it's much better to explain them as part of the story than waiting to be asked, and then it feel like you were almost kind of backpedaling and having to give the information.
Hoping no one would notice.
Yeah, we much prefer to be upfront and share the whole story because, as Chris says, stuff happens, and grown-ups appreciate and understand that. They know that things aren't going to be plain sailing all the time. The other thing that, by getting your practice in order, we mean as well is we refer to your kind of CQC folders. Make sure your policies are in place. If you have key performance indicators, are they documented? How do you track the performance of your practice? Again, this all feeds into you're running a good business. And when the person who buys your practice takes over, he is going to be able to move into an optimized business and start on a real solid footing from day one.
It's even simple things, isn't it? Like, if you get a dodgy Google review, respond to it.
Yeah.
Don't ignore it, or in the worst case, don't even know it's happened. But because you're back to this whole thing about showing that you know what's going on.
Yeah. And then the last thing around getting yourself in order is look at contracts. You're going to have employment contracts. You'll have associate contracts. You'll have service contracts. Know where they are. Know what's in them. If they're service contracts, know when they're going to expire, when they're going to be up for review. Are your employment contracts up to date? Can you find them? Associate agreements, are they in place? Are they current? Things change over time.
What? GDPR. I mean, when did GDPR come? A couple of years ago, 3 years ago? I honestly can't remember that. But I'm going to just throw it out to you. How many of you have reviewed your your staff contracts, bearing in mind GDPR, because there needs to be something in GDPR in it.
Yeah.
And I would say from the experience that we have, very few of you, unless you've got a advisor.
Yeah.
But I would think in most cases they're just left and left. And HR, I mean, Sarah, who is one of our experts on the Principals Club,
Yeah.
she we always used to laugh. Her husband's Tom, and from Buxton Coates, great firm we use. And Tom is a property lawyer, commercial lawyer.
Yeah.
Sorry, he's a commercial lawyer, not a property lawyer. And Sarah is HR, and she always used to tease Tom that property law, like the last thing that anything really important happened was 1954, whereas HR law probably changed like yesterday. So HR just moves so quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And if you're not up to speed with it, and let's be brutally honest, you're a dentist, so why would you be thinking about HR?
Oh, yeah.
You're going to come a cropper if you're not careful.
And then also you may have a trusted lieutenant who's going to help you in this process. And if you do have somebody that's going to work with you, and it might be your partner who does the management or the administration in the practice, or you may have a practice manager who you trust with your life, who will do some of that assembling of the information. Make sure that they're engaged in the process and they understand the plan you're working to, but also importantly the timeline as well. Because if they are going to be supporting you with producing documentation, you need to be really upfront about where you see this going and what they need to be doing to support you. You don't want kind of to be carrying more luggage than you need to. You want that person to be helping you and moving that transaction forward. But on that point, selling is sensitive. There's a high degree of confidentiality around people finding out. So you would only really want to be using somebody in the practice who you know is an absolutely trusted person. Because in an ideal world, what you really want to do is you want to keep the sale of your practice secret for as long as possible. And there's nothing sneaky or disingenuous about that. But if I give you kind of two options, the first option is actually I'm selling my business. I don't know when and I don't know who it's to, but don't worry.
Everything's going to be fine.
You're probably going to worry because you don't know what that looks like. But if I say, look, actually, I'm in a process. I am selling the business. I'm of an age where I'm going to be retiring. But I found a buyer. The buyer's a lady called Jennifer. She's really, really nice. She approaches dentistry in the way that we do it at the moment. And she's got great standards. And we're going to introduce you to her at the right time. It won't be long. But there's a really exciting future. And the best thing we can all do at the moment is just continue caring for our patients. That sounds way better than the first option, and the only difference is a bit of time. So by having that conversation a little bit later, it does protect your team from unnecessary worry.
And you only have
it
to
sounds so much better
when you've got someone, don't you?
for sure.
Because what we also think you should do now, you guys listening to us, whether you're going to sell now or whatever in a year, 2 years, 10 years, whatever, this is the time to start finding out where all that information is. Because one of the things that we can tell you happens is dentists, you think to yourself, I tell you what, I'll do it all myself. And I'll ask Maria if she could tell me where the staff contracts are. Well, the answer is you've probably never asked a question like this ever since Maria's been with you. Now, Maria is pretty smart because Maria is going to go, why have they just asked that question?
Yeah.
That's a bit unusual. So, and we see it all the time, don't we? Where people just think they can casually drop in. Oh, do you know where the X-ray certification is? Because why would you be asking for that? You've run the practice for 10 years. You've never asked for it in your entire life. So all it says to the team when you ask that question is something's changing.
Yeah.
Whereas if you start doing it now, or start looking or saying, well, actually, I'm trying to get it all together in one place for the CQC, whatever inspection that might happen. As Andy says, it's such a better conversation because people are clever. People are clever. They know you probably better than your partners do.
Yeah.
They know when you've got a bad mood.
Changes in behaviour.
We think we're being really smart, that, I'm just asking.
But it's silly things like people nipping out, just nipping out to take a phone call.
Yes.
You've got a set of behaviours of the things we do, and suddenly you start taking a lot more phone calls during your lunch hour than you would before. So either you're having an affair or you're selling your practice. That's where people jump to those conclusions very quickly. So the more prep you can do in advance, the better.
Cool. Well, we find it quite funny sometimes. It still happens whereby someone will ring you, and our client, the client will be talking to a valuer or one of our team or something, and then the line goes dead, and we all go, "Someone's walked in the room."
Yeah,
and that's basically. There was a little conversation. Oh, right, no, thanks, bye. So don't be that person because people spot changes.
Yeah, and as Chris said, and we mentioned before, if you do want that due diligence template, like I say, just drop us a DM. We're both on social media. Drop us an email, and like I say, we'll get that sorted for
Yeah,
you.
definitely.
So, what are the other things that are going to come at you? There's going to be travel hazards coming your way, and there's pitfalls, and there's pitfalls when we travel. If there's no roadmap, we could miss turns in the road. If we don't look at the fine print in our travel insurance documents, we might find out that we're not covered for something in particular. And we always assume that things are going to be plain sailing, but we know there's going to be delays and cancellations. I'm sure people would have missed, boats or trains or aeroplanes and
Well,
things.
my Eurostar on Monday.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And I mean, that's probably a pretty good one about lack of communication, wasn't it? I come back in Eurostar, Bruges, told you, not part of the tourist board. But we're all panicking because there was a massive delay, and we finally got through and sat on our train with 4 minutes to go. So we were like, "Phew." But I can tell you, there was probably hundreds of people behind us in security who hadn't made it. And people were getting a little bit antsy, they were getting a little bit shouty, a little bit pushy. And at the end of the day, they actually delayed the train until everybody got on board. Now, why did they not say that before to stop all this stress and pressure? And it sort of ties in with the sail journey. If there is something, communicate it. Don't go radio silence and then wonder why everyone falls out. It's mad.
And like you would, it's really interesting. I think there's a shift back towards using travel agents. So when I was young, the only way you could book a holiday was you went to the local travel agent. They gave you a brochure, you flicked through the brochure, you found somewhere, and they arranged it all for you. And then we went through a window of 20 plus years where everybody jumped online and did it themselves. Whereas we were out for dinner with some guys last week. They're from America. And one of the guys had spent a few days in Norway, and he was describing what he'd done. And it was like he took this train trip up through Bergen. It really was a sensational trip. And I'm like, how did you find all this? And did you put it together? He said, oh, there's a local lady in Norway, and it's her passion to design holidays for people to find like the real Norway. And it led on to this conversation about there seems to be a shift towards people wanting to use, bespoke, high-end specialist travel agents because they know the landscape, they know the risks, they know how to navigate it safely, but also interestingly.
Yeah.
And it's the same selling your dental practice. You can do it alone. You do not need a broker. But the broker's done it before, and a good broker would have done it thousands of times before. So just bear in mind whether you want to learn on your prized asset, your practice, and do it yourself, or whether you use a broker. I would sincerely hope that any broker is more than going to cover their costs in added value. But just think about it, because you only get one shot. And if you try and do it yourself and it doesn't work out, recovering from that position is like arranging finance. If you try and arrange finance and you do it badly, getting a bank to go from a no to a yes can be quite challenging. The other thing as well is we said before about accounts and documentation. Double check that the things you've got are the things you've got. We've had cases in the past where people have pulled out what they think is their NHS contract and have put it to one side, only to find that actually it was superseded by another contract, which they can't find. And we had one deal a couple of years ago now that actually it collapsed because they could not find the contract. It was nowhere to be found, and the buyer got fed up. And sure, it was there and it was going to get found at some point, but the buyer just lost interest and they went and bought another practice. So our poor client, which was kind of partly their fault, lost their buyer because they couldn't pull that documentation together.
It's so important. That the holiday planning is a great analogy because you wouldn't just rock up and have a go. I mean, you might do, but the chances of you having a particularly successful holiday or where you want to be is, it's. I remember. I don't know if you remember. Some of you might not remember. In my youth, we used to do this thing where you go on teletext and book a holiday, and you sort of vaguely knew where you were going. But then you'd arrive and they'd take you to a hotel that was like half built or something. And I can remember it vividly. I went to, I think it was Albufeira in Portugal. And we all were on, there was quite a few of us on this bus thing. And they were dropping people off at like half built hotels. And I was thinking, Oh my goodness! And then we came out of the town, and they dropped us off at a beautiful hotel in the middle of an orangery, whatever it is, an orange
Mm.
farm. I don't know. Um, but that's the luck of the draw.
Oh yeah.
If you don't really know what you're planning or where your destination is, then you're going to get these funny little things that will crop up and potentially kick
Yeah.
you. It is.
And going back to the holiday thing, when you fly, if you fly long haul, we now need to get to an airport 3 hours before. And that the reason for that 3 hours before is that's your buffer time. Because you get there 3 hours before, and if something happened on the way and you only got there 2 hours before, you'd probably still be okay, it'll be fine. Setting your practice, build in buffer time. So if you definitely want to finish by a certain date, try and add 3 or 4 months to the time it's going to allow you to sell your practice. Because if you set your heart on a particular date, or you want to go on a cruise on a particular date or whatever, there's nothing more stressful than sprinting to the finish line just to meet that deadline. Whereas if you can build in a buffer now, if your transaction did complete 3 or 4 months earlier than perhaps you thought it might do, that is a much better position to be in than getting stressed and agitated and frustrated because it's getting so close to your deadline. So again, build in a little bit of a buffer. Just get to the airport a bit early.
This would be a good time, Andy, for you to tell them the story of the man who had the practice in the hotel. I think it was something with a lease. Do you remember the bloke who didn't build in any buffer time?
Oh, what he was going on a cruise.
Oh, you have
So
got my drift.
he had a practice. It was a leasehold practice, and the landlord was assistant.
He's a great lad. I've known him for years. He's lovely.
yeah.
He'll be really helpful.
And we hear this so often. I know the landlord really well. Landlord's really nice. Now the lease will be
Dave will be
extended.
great.
It'll be fine. The brutal reality is many landlords are quite commercial animals. So when they identify the opportunity to increase the rent or request a payment to act swiftly, some will take advantage of that situation. And this particular client, the poor chap, the landlord got wind that the practice was being sold and effectively held him to ransom to the tune of £50,000. And because he'd promised his partner that they are going to go on this cruise to celebrate the sale of the practice, and it was all booked and it was going to be the holiday of a lifetime, sadly, he had no choice, but he had to pay the landlord £50,000.
It was about 10 or 12% of the actual value, was it?
It was a huge amount. And this was quite a while ago as well. I mean, highly unethical, horrible on the landlord's part. But he kind of had the practice seller over a barrel.
Yeah, and it does happen. We've had it a few times whereby, it's that thing, Dave or whoever your landlord is. You might have a really good relationship with him, but also commercially, he might be having a little bit of a tricky time.
Yep.
So if you rock up and say, "Hey, Dave, I'm thinking of selling my practice. I'd really like to give you a new 15-year lease." Don't be surprised if you don't hear him go ka-ching.
Yeah.
What you want to do is don't mention that you're selling. It's the prep, it's the planning. Don't say I'm selling, because those magical words, the landlord potentially, I'm not saying they all do, because some are very nice people, they will basically hold your feet to the fire and say, yeah, all right, yeah, I'll do that, or I just won't do it. I'll do it really slowly.
Yeah.
Really, really slowly.
But I could be incentivized to move quicker.
But if you'd like to give me a little bit extra, I'll move a little bit
extra money.
So we go back to the planning thing.
Yeah.
Give yourself a time.
You might be sitting there saying, "Oh no, that wouldn't happen to me." No, I know the person. We've seen this a lot, and it's sadly way more common than you think. Because ultimately, that landlord is not going to have a relationship with you going forward. Your relationship's going to terminate. Therefore, there's no love lost. It's purely a commercial transaction. So the last piece we're coming to now is around this is the travel agent, and we've already mentioned kind of the importance of a travel agent, and obviously the broker being part of that. But there are other advisors that sit in that situation as well. So you've got somebody who's going to value your practice and a broker, or you can do it alone. But then there's also other people who are going to help you. So you will have an accountant most likely. You will need to work with your accountant to make sure you get your accounts up to date. It would also make good sense perhaps to let your accountant know that you're selling, because they're going to need to do those final set of accounts.
And tax structure.
Yes, that there's two other key people I always think that it's good to engage with quite early on. There's a solicitor, and that solicitor should be somebody who specialises in dentistry. You might find that their quote is slightly higher than somebody who's a generalist or a family friend, but they're going to get the deal done more quickly, and they're unlikely to incur future costs because they know what they're doing. Where we see quite low quotes from general solicitors, they don't really know the scope of the work. So what happens is they get into it, they go, oh, right, CQC. Okay, right, so what have we got to do there? And the way lawyers work is more work means more time, means more money. So your end bill
If they've
increases.
given you a fixed price, it means I won't do any work at all.
Less work.
I'll do absolutely bugger all.
But
It's, yeah.
So there's the broker, there's the accountant, there's the solicitor.
So can I just say something on the lawyer thing? One thing we always say in lawyers is it's not so much what's in the contract.
Yes.
It's what's not in the contract. So if you happen to use your family friend, and it's down to you, who charges you 1,500 quid, and then you find out that someone then sues you because they didn't put something in the contract, then it's sort of your fault, because the reality of it is a proper lawyer who understands dentistry knows what should be in and knows what shouldn't be in. And that's the most important thing, I think. Is that,
for sure.
Because it gives you, I mean, we've had cases where people have been, do you remember the guy? I can't remember his name now. I probably shouldn't say it even if I could. But and he sold his practice. Then about, I think it was 12 months later, the guys who bought it came after him for 70 grand. And basically he had to pay it because the lawyer he'd used knew or didn't know that there should have been, I think it was a warranty or something in the contract to protect him. So basically, he ended up paying 70 grand.
Wasn't protected.
It's just like madness, but for being cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the last person that really should be in your kind of advisory team is a financial advisor, because when you sell your practice, it's going to produce a large lump sum. And one, you need to know what to do with that lump sum to make sure you get it invested. You may already have some plans for it, but it may well be a lump of it you want to get invested. But also, there's certain things you can do as a business owner at the moment using unused tax relief. So have you made all the contributions available to you in ISAs? Have you made all the contributions in terms of pensions and company contributions if you operate under a limited company structure? So there's a bundle of things that you can do while you continue to own the dental practice that it will be good news for you. It doesn't impact the value of your business, how you use that money and those contributions you make. So if you made a thumping great big pension contribution, that does not, whilst it does reduce your profit, which does reduce your EBITDA, when we do a reconstituted net profit, we make an allowance for that. So we add that back in. So you can do those things safely because we know what they are. But doing those while you continue to own a business is a really tax efficient way of doing it. Once the paper has been signed and your deal's completed and you no longer have that business, some of those company benefits are lost. So speaking to a financial advisor early on can help. And again, we have FTA Wealth as part of our group. If you want to have a chat to them, let us know. We can introduce them. And if it's not through us, speak to your own advisor and just start to get a heads up and get some thoughts around things you can do while you still own your business.
Choices and options. I think that's what we always say. It's all about choices and options. And the more you know, the better prepared you are, and the more advice you take. You don't have to take any of it. You know, you can ignore it all. You're a bit of an idiot if you do, but you can. But ultimately, everything we want and everything we talk about is giving you a choice and an option. There is nothing worse, and I'm trying to think of an analogy when it might have happened, is when you find out you could have done something, but you can't anymore. And I think we would all prefer to know what I could do, even if I decide not to do it, rather than think, if only someone had told me.
It's like coming back from Rome and someone saying, you didn't go to the Colosseum.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't go.
No,
it's amazing.
It's brilliant.
But it's too late.
Yeah, you're done, aren't you? You're done.
But also by having a specialised team, it's highly likely that team are going to know one another as well. So they're going to be coordinated. So they're going to be able to work together. So, for example, we know most of the accountants that operate in dentistry. We know a lot of the lawyers that operate in dentistry. We know lots of the financial advisors. So we can be your team. So we can get coordinated and make sure that all the things are being pulled together for your best gain. Whereas if you have the individuals assembled who don't have that specialty, it's going to be harder for them to work together because they won't work as a tag team. They won't know what the next thing that needs to be done is.
Yeah, you want people who are on your team, don't you, really?
Exactly.
Who are all moving in the right direction. And you know, it is, I think it goes really nicely with the travel agent. You know, all those people, and I'm sure some of these guys might have been on it, you know, when in COVID and people had booked online and then all the airlines, you try getting hold of an airline. I mean, we were fortunate. I think you were the same. So I would have used a travel agent, and we used that great lady, and it was brilliant. You rang
she was
her,
amazing.
she sorted it out, rather than me being you are number 757 in the queue, and you never, you know, I try sending us an email, you'd be lucky, and I think that's where we sort of say, you know, it's you need someone who, well, we think you need someone to coordinate, to help you plan, because you will get a better result.
Yeah.
You can do it without any advice and do it on your own, but I would virtually guarantee you won't get the best result. And it might not mean money, it just might mean that you'll get stressed and pull all your hair out.
And the reality is, the reason you've joined us this evening is that this is something that is on your horizon. You're going to be doing this within the next few years, I would imagine, because you've joined us this evening. And our goal is to give you the best exit possible. If that's with us, that's amazing. And if it's not, we still want you to have the best exit possible. We are massively invested in the profession and also the future of the profession. We want people to thrive and do well. And that's kind of partly why we've started a new initiative, the Principals Club, which is a free to join club, which is a community based. It's access to insights and information and financial data to help you run your business. As Chris said earlier, it's bloody hard. Running a business is not easy. But I think one of the things that doesn't get spoken about that much either is it's lonely. You know, you don't have many people to turn to for help that are trusted and have the experience and can give you advice that you're going to lean on. And part of us creating the Principals Clubs for that reason. So, like I say, you're welcome to join that. If you just, it's the principals-club.com. You can sign up for free. You just drop your email in, and we'll start sending you newsletter content. There's a host of webinars coming down the line. There'll be live events as well. So it'd be lovely to have you in that. That's us pretty much done for tonight. The next thing really is over to you. It's kind of, you know, if you would like us to help you, we can. If you want that that due diligence guide, just let us know. We can get that over to you.
If you want a conversation, just give us a shout.
Yeah, exactly right. And our details are there on the screen now. So yeah, like I say, reach out to us in whichever style and way suits you. We've got just a few minutes left. If anybody has any questions, the question box is open if there are any questions. But as we say, the idea is to try to set you up for a good exit. And if the only thing you take from this is it will take longer than you think, there'll be more planning than you think. But the good news is it's in your control.
Yeah. You start when you want to start, and you can plan as you would for your holiday when you want to actually do something.
And that old adage, being prepared to sell and selling are two completely different things.
Yeah.
You should always be prepared, but then the control's with you in terms of when you do that.
Yeah, no, definitely. We're trying to think of some witty travel analogy, but sort of failing at the moment.
Well,
I think I've used them all up, to be brutal.
I think we've fully expired. We do have an ambition. We do have an ambition at some point to do one that centres around song titles.
Yeah, that's true.
So we are working on something that's in the making. But we'll try and get to that at some point.
We could be saying now we're going to Barbados, but a lot of you won't know that because you're far too young, probably. Oh, actually, you might not. You know, you might be in there, but we're going to. Walk 500 miles.
You've already started.
Oh, no, I'm there. They're rubbish there.
Well, thank you very much indeed, everyone, for joining us tonight. And like I say, any questions that you want to send to us directly, our details are there. Feel free to. And we'll look forward to seeing you for the next webinar.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed.